here is a case where they say that the letter has been given to the ACP. But if it is being given to the ACP, it will be there in the GD, and if something of that sort, if it is a fault of the police department, definitely an inquiry will be held towards that effect, and sufficient action in that angle will be taken. But this letter has been brought forward a day after the incident.
But it's dated a day before.
They are saying that the letter has been given 48 hours or 24 hours before.
Yes,
but
here 48 hours ago. The letter is dated 2nd of December. The stampede took place on the 4th.
Yes, but this letter was not immediately even placed. It was placed a day after the event took place, before the media.
Sure, the media doesn't have to know if the letter was given or not. As far as the letter is given to the police and the police have acted on it, that's what's required. But let me get in Mr. Srivastav as well. Legally speaking, does the police have a strong case? With how they went about this entire thing, because that's what Allu Arjun's legal team has also been saying, that he was picked up without any notice. There was no procedure that was followed before he was arrested. Secondly, many believe that the sections that have been invoked against him are extremely excessive.
Absolutely. See, it is complete, I would say, complete abuse of process by the police officials, complete misuse of their powers. First of all, I don't understand as to how sections 105 and 1181 of BNS has been implicated. See, those sections, for instance, section 105 is culpable homicide not amounting to murder. See, these sections can only be inserted when there is a clear intent, where a person can be, can be caused to death. But here, where is the intention? See, maximum section could have been 106, that too not against Allu Arjun, but the people who were responsible. That section 106 is about death by negligence, which is a bailable offense. But here intentionally 105 was implicated to make it non-bailable. Similarly, section 118, see, that section is what? That is about, giving some sort of grievous hurt, using some dangerous weapons. Where is the weapon used in this case? And secondly, on an actor who has got nothing to do with this. He was simply a visitor. He was invited. So he was an invitee at that place. He had not arranged any such program or anything like that. Now my friend is saying that intimation was given to the police, but police had not provided the permission. Whether the police denied the permission, why is it that the police will just sit on those applications?
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post, and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin with Syria, which is picking the pieces after 13 years of civil war and facing the prospect of more violence, with two potential theatres of conflict emerging, one involving the Israelis and the second involving the Turks. So will Syria slide into yet another war? Tonight we'll discuss that. Also bringing you images from inside Bashar al-Assad's palace, how he ran a narco state and made money off drugs. And while he may have lost power, he still controls a lot of wealth. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, Mohammed Yunus is at it again. Instead of setting his own house in order, he wants to revive the SARC. And he complains that India's issues with Pakistan are hampering his efforts. We'll also talk about why NATO members in Europe want to increase their defense spending to 3% of their GDP. How the Netherlands has done away with beauty pageants altogether, and why the rest of the world must follow suit. And how India is celebrating the historic win of Gukesh, the youngest world chess championship. First up, the headlines. The Kremlin backs US President-elect Donald Trump, says his opposition to Ukraine firing US-supplied weapons to Russia fully aligns with Moscow's position. Russia has repeatedly warned the West against supplying weapons to Ukraine, claiming that it makes NATO countries direct participants in the war. Taiwan says China has concluded its massive maritime exercise around the island. About 90 Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels took part in the drills. Beijing has not confirmed the exercise but has said that they alone will decide when and where to hold such drills. China claims self-ruled Taiwan as part of their territory. Emmanuel Macron named centrist François Bayrou as the French Prime Minister, and he hopes the decision will end months of political turmoil. Last week, French MPs ousted Michel Barnier as the Prime Minister in a no-confidence vote. Bayrou is the fourth Prime Minister that Macron has announced this year. The presidents of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to meet in Angola on Sunday. They will hold a fresh round of talks aimed at ending the conflict in the DRC's troubled east. The Kigali-backed M23 militia has seized large swathes of the DRC's territory. In August, Angola had mediated a fragile truce, but clashes have intensified since October. In India, actor Allu Arjun is arrested. He was sent to 14 days in judicial custody, but the Telangana High Court has now granted him interim bail. Last week, he had made an appearance at the premiere of his movie Pushpa 2. This reportedly led to a stampede which claimed the life of a 35-year-old woman. And people with missing teeth may be able to grow new ones. That's the claim made by some Japanese dentists. They are testing a pioneering drug that could offer an alternative to dentures and implants. The researchers want to make the drug available as early as 2030. The situation in Syria is said to be fluid, but it's closer to a powder keg. One wrong move and things could get ugly. It could escalate into another full-blown war. There are two places where it could erupt. One is in the south with Israel and the other is in the east with the Kurds. Let's start with what Israel is doing. Syrian military installations are under attack. They're being blown up by Israel. The Israeli army just released a video. It purportedly shows them blowing up weapon factories and even Syrian Air Force jets. Now, how would you feel in this situation? Imagine that you're a rebel fighter. You just ousted a tyrannical regime. You're working to consolidate your grip on power, but then a foreign nation enters your territory. They send troops into disputed border regions, and now they're blowing up your newly acquired military infrastructure. You can see why the Syrian rebels won't be happy with this. Israel says it is doing all this to secure itself. It says it does not want Syrian military assets falling into terrorist hands. But what they're doing also has side effects. It is likely to anger the new rulers of Damascus and perhaps encourage them to hit back. Even Israel's big brother, the US, is wary about this.
Again, the Israelis have been clear about what they're doing and why they're doing it. I think across the board, when it comes to any actors who have real interests in Syria, it's also really important at this time that we all try to make sure that we're not sparking any additional conflicts. That's also an important objective.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in West Asia again. It's his 12th trip to the region since last October, since the Gaza war broke out. But this time his focus is Syria. His goal is what he stated, to prevent additional conflicts. Israel is one potential spoiler in Syria, but Washington seems to be more concerned with another foreign actor, and that is Turkey. Antony Blinken flew down to Ankara yesterday. He met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and their Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Blinken's first goal was to get the Turks on the same page. While the US and Turkey are technically allies, they're both NATO members, they have been on opposing sides in Syria. The countries back separate rebel groups, and these groups have been clashing. We've told you about the Turkish interest before. They're dead against the Kurdish forces in northern Syria. Turkey has a large Kurdish population, and some of them want a separate country for Kurds. And Ankara has been fighting the separatist forces for decades. It believes that the Kurds in Syria are working with their brethren in Turkey. So Ankara has used the turmoil in Syria to go after the Kurds there. The rebels backed by Turkey attacked the city of Manjib this week. This city was held by Kurdish forces earlier. There were clashes in Manjib all week. Reports say that more than 200 people were killed. But a shaky ceasefire now seems to be in place in Manjib. However, the hostilities are spreading to other places. The new flashpoint is Deir ez-Zor. It's a city in eastern Syria. It was controlled by the Kurds, but now it seems they've been pushed out of this region. Turkey sees this as a victory against what it considers a terrorist group. So that's one side of the story. Turkey's battle against the Kurds, it's playing out. But the US sees things differently. Washington supports these Kurdish forces. In fact, they're a key ally in America's fight against terrorism, especially against the ISIS. And the ISIS is rearing its ugly head again in Syria. The Kurds helped the US defeat ISIS in the past, and Washington wants to keep using them. So it's a delicate balance. The US wants Turkey to stop fighting the Kurds so that the Kurds can focus on the ISIS. And that is part of why Blinken went to Ankara, to try and rein in the Turks.
We're very focused on Syria, very focused on the opportunity that now is before us and before the Syrian people to move from out from under the shackles of Bashar al-Assad to a different and better future for the Syrian people, one that the Syrian people decide for themselves. And we talked about how Turkey, how the United States, how other partners in the region can support those efforts. And I think there's broad agreement on what we would each like to see going forward.
Saving the Kurds isn't the only thing on Blinken's agenda. The US also wants to make use of Turkey's influence in Syria, of their ties to the new people in charge, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. Washington doesn't have direct links to this group, but Ankara does. Turkey's Secret Service chief was spotted in Damascus yesterday, around the same time that Blinken was making his way to Ankara. Turkey also announced that it plans to reopen its embassy in Syria. The embassy has been closed since 2012. Now they want to reopen it. Turkey has appointed a temporary chargé d'affaires. It's clear that Turkey is trying to work with the new Syrian government, and the US wants to make use of this. They also want a seat at the table. So this is the situation. It's currently advantage Turkey. They have the ties to power. They are the ones backing attacks on the Kurds, and they are the ones best placed to avoid a new war. Will the US be able to convince Erdogan to ease the pressure, though? Or will Turkey push forward with its own agenda, risking even more conflict in Syria? We'll keep tracking the story as it develops. Syria as a nation has been through a lot. 13 years of civil war, 500,000 people dead. There's more rubble than buildings there. The economy is in a shambles. Yet Bashar al-Assad led quite a luxurious life. Look at his presidential palace in Damascus. As you can see, it's a sprawling, luxurious compound. 3 6-story buildings surrounded by manicured gardens. The interiors are even more opulent. The doors are bulletproof. Inside, the floors are lined with the finest marble. There are plush red carpets. The furnishing is high-end, like chandeliers made of crystal. There's expensive furniture, countless boxes of jewelry, bank records for millions of dollars, antique goods, racks of designer clothes, and refrigerators full of meat. His garage was full of luxury cars worth millions of dollars, including a rare Ferrari F50. It has an eye-watering price tag of $5.5 million. Assad fled the country last week. Ordinary Syrians have since raided his palace. Some have left with goods, including designer bags and furniture. Others just wanted to see how the family lived.
After he became arrogant and tyrannical, dominating the land for 13 years from 2011 to 2024, causing hunger, killings, torture, and the displacement of Syrian children. Today, we were finally able to enter Bashar al-Assad's palace. His palace has now become a place for the Syrian people.
I came to see what we were forbidden from seeing, because we were not supposed to witness these things. We had to remain in the reality we lived in: poverty, deprivation, and hardship. I came to witness what he owns, which we do not have.
For years, Syria's First Lady Asma al-Assad insisted that they led an ordinary life, that there were no trappings of luxury. Yet these pictures tell a different story. And speaking of pictures, the palace was full of them. Family holiday photos, pictures of parties. There were signs of a normal life too. Homework done by the children, birthday letters, even a Mother's Day card, all found scattered across the floor. So how did Assad fund this luxurious lifestyle? Of course, he had the backing of Russia and Iran, but he needed something more. Another robust source of income, and that came in the form of a drug, Captagon. It's a stimulant drug originally developed in the 1960s. It was legal for a while. By 1990, exports of this drug were limited, and in 2009, countries stopped manufacturing it altogether. And that's when Syria took over. They started producing this drug illegally. It took a few cents to produce a Captagon pill. It was then sent across the border to Jordan and finally to Saudi Arabia. That's where the drug was sold for nearly $25. Captagon is mostly found in West Asia, especially in the Gulf states. You see, alcohol is illegal there, so they use Captagon for recreational purposes. The drug made it to conflict zones as well. Hamas fighters are said to be using it, or were said to be using it. So large parts of West Asia was hooked onto this drug, and Syria was the drug dealer. The trade was run primarily by Maher al-Assad, the brother of Bashar al-Assad. By some estimates, the business was worth $10 billion, which is funny because Syria's GDP is less than $9 billion. So Captagon kept Assad afloat. And since taking over, the rebels have targeted it, dismantling his large network of drug trade.
After we entered and did a sweep, we found that this is a factory for Maher al-Assad and his partner Amir Kidi. They work in Captagon and drugs. And we found a large number of devices that were stuffed with packages of Captagon pills meant to be smuggled out of the country.
So what happens to the Assads now? They lost their source of income. They lost their country. What will they do now? We know that Bashar al-Assad fled to Moscow. His wife and children were already there. Sources suggest that he had two choices, Russia or Iran. But in the end, he chose Moscow. His son studies in the city. Also, his wife would get better medical care there. She was diagnosed with cancer in May this year. And that made Russia the top choice. Of course, the Assads will lead a comfortable life there, but it won't be the same. It will neither be luxurious nor extravagant. They may stay below the radar. That doesn't mean, though, that they are strapped for money. The family's net worth is around $2 billion, hidden in offshore tax havens, shell companies, and real estate holdings. They also own 20 apartments in Moscow, valued at over $30 million. So the Assads, of course, won't be struggling. For years, they ruled Syria with an iron fist. The family lived in opulence as the people continued to suffer. In Moscow, they will live as shadows of their former selves, haunted by the legacy of destruction that they've left behind. A few days ago, India's Foreign Secretary visited Dhaka. Vikram Misri met with Mohammad Yunus, the leader of Bangladesh's interim government. He goes by the title of Chief Advisor. Now, during this meeting, Yunus made a request. He asked for help to, quote-unquote, clear the clouds over the bilateral relationship between India and Bangladesh. And it sounded like an attempt to mend ties. After several rounds of provocation, Yunus seemed to be making the right noises finally. But within days, he's changed his tune again. Mohammad Yunus is back to stirring tensions with India. He is once again lecturing New Delhi, this time by calling for the revival of SAARC. He made these comments at a meeting yesterday. It wasn't even a meeting of diplomats or political parties. It was a virtual gathering of oncologists from SAARC nations. It was supposed to be an apolitical event, yet Yunus turned it into an opportunity to target India, to score political points and to deliver more unwarranted remarks. But first things first, what is SAARC? SAARC stands for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It is a grouping of 7 South Asian nations: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. This is the group that Yunus is talking about. He said, and I'm quoting, "SAARC is very important to me." And he said he wants to activate the dead grouping, but the frosty ties between India and Pakistan were coming in the way. In fact, let me share the exact quote. This is what Mohammed Yunus said: "SAARC is not being activated because of some issues between India and Pakistan. I think the problems between the two countries should not affect other countries." Now, this is not the first time that he said this, knowing fully well what issues India has with Pakistan and why New Delhi insists that terror and talks cannot go hand in hand. So why did Mohammed Yunus say what he did? Perhaps his words betray his political ambitions. They show how he wants to shape regional politics and Bangladesh's ties with its neighbors. Consider what Yunus said next, and I'm quoting again: "If South Asian leaders meet every year, stand together and take pictures, it sends a message to the world that we are united. This will present South Asian countries to the world in a positive light and help them move forward." I must say that's a very reductive approach. Diplomacy is not just about posing for pictures. And we all know why SAARC has failed. Diplomatic groupings succeed only when there's a convergence of interests and values, when members can agree on a common agenda, like establishing security. And in fact, security has been a key priority for SAARC. After all, most of its members share borders with each other. But how can SAARC be secure when one of its members actively undermines regional security? We are talking about Pakistan. It is a state sponsor of terrorism, and it has single-handedly derailed SAARC. Its open support to terror groups has made meaningful cooperation impossible. Plus, Islamabad has time and again misused the forum to push its Kashmir agenda. This has blocked progress within SAARC, and India has repeatedly highlighted this. And other SAARC members have supported India, including Bangladesh. 4 SAARC countries have been backing India's position: Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Afghanistan, as you know, is now led by the Taliban. But now Bangladesh, under Mohammed Yunus, is going in a different direction. Which brings us to the question, what are Yunus's priorities after all? He's not an elected leader of Bangladesh. As chief advisor, he has a clear mandate: restore law and order, stabilize the economy, and hold elections. Has Yunus delivered on any of these fronts? Let's look at his track record so far. An election is out of the question at the moment because Yunus has fallen behind on the reforms plan. Last month, he appealed for patience. He said he needs more time. How much time? It could take up to 4 years, he said.
I am not sure how much reform we will be able to make. But I promise you, if you give us the opportunity, we will complete some mandatory reforms and then go for the highly sought after election we all are looking for. I would request you to keep patience till then.
There are a lot of ifs here. Where does this leave Bangladesh's economy? It faces significant challenges. Inflation remains a pressing issue. Last month, it crossed 11%. That's the highest in 4 months. And what is driving this spike? Mostly the high food prices. Businesses are feeling the strain. Recently, a survey of Bangladeshi businesses was published. It highlighted 4 major risks to the economy. Again, inflation was at the top, followed by economic downturn, poverty, and inequality. Instead of fixing all of this, Mohammed Yunus wants to revive SAARC. He wants to launch new currency notes to erase the image of the country's founder, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, from the Bangladeshi taka. He wants to get India to muzzle Sheikh Hasina. She's been living in New Delhi for more than 4 months now. Initially, she remained quiet, but now she has started speaking at international forums. She has been criticizing Yunus, accusing him of mass killings and calling him selfish and greedy. India has refused to endorse Hasina's remarks, but it's a gesture that has not been reciprocated. Dhaka has largely ignored Delhi's concerns, especially on the growing attacks on minorities in Bangladesh. The Hindu community there is being targeted.
Foreign Secretary highlighted during his talks India's support for a democratic, stable, peaceful, progressive and inclusive Bangladesh. He also reiterated India's willingness to build a positive and constructive relationship with Bangladesh based on mutual trust and respect and mutual sensitivity to each other's concerns and interests. Foreign Secretary also discussed certain developments and issues and conveyed India's concerns, especially those relating to the safety and welfare of minorities.
But let alone addressing it, the Yunus government does not even admit that there's a problem. They constantly downplay and undermine the severity of these incidents and challenges, and that sums up the problem. An unelected leader pushing his flawed diplomatic agenda and prioritizing politics over the people of his country.
It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge.
Our next story is about NATO. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO members finally seem to have woken up. The European ones think that they are in danger and they have realized that they need to do more. They are planning to increase their defense spending to 3% of their GDP. And this is a huge win for the United States, especially for Donald Trump. Let me give you some background first. NATO is a Western military alliance. It has 32 members, 30 in Europe, plus Canada and the US. NATO was supposed to be a security bulwark for the Western world. But in recent years, it changed. It became an excuse, a way for Europe to shirk its defensive duties and leave security to Big Brother America. That's how it's been since the 1990s at least, but things finally seem to be changing because of two major factors. One is Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the second is the return of Donald Trump. Trump first took aim at NATO in 2018 during his first term as president. He pulled up the other NATO members for not contributing their fair share. NATO has a guideline. It wants members to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. Every member should spend 2% of the GDP on defense, but most countries don't do it. So Donald Trump called them out on it. He threatened to pull the US out of NATO, or at the very least, not protect what he called the delinquent states. That's how he put it. He called them delinquents. The words were harsh, but they gave NATO members a much-needed reality check. Most of them started to increase their defense spending, but it was happening slowly. Then in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's when real progress took place. Europe was shaken, so it started to invest in its defenses. European NATO members increased spending by $100 billion. This is over the last 2 years. And things became even more urgent this year after Donald Trump won the US presidential election. The European NATO members know that they are on the clock. So how many NATO members spend 2% of their GDP on defense now? Until 2018, just 6 of them did. But this year, the number has gone up to 23. It is major progress. But is it enough? NATO chief Mark Rutte does not think so.
A decade ago, allies agreed it was time to invest in defense once again. The benchmark was set at 2%. By 2023, NATO allies agreed to invest at least 2%. At least. I can tell you, we are going to need a lot more than 2%.
NATO is now calling for even more defense spending. 2% is not enough. They want to increase it to 2.5% in the short term and 3% by 2030. NATO is planning to put forth this proposal next year during their summit in June, and that will happen in the Netherlands. It's a steep hike, but the NATO chief defended this increase.
We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. Danger is moving towards us at full speed. We must not look the other way. We must face it. What is happening in Ukraine could happen here too. And regardless of the outcome of this war, we will not be safe in the future unless we are prepared to deal with danger. We can do that. we can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life. This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending.
He's talking about preventing the next war and preserving the Western way of life. That may sound nice, but it won't be easy. Spending 3% of the GDP on defense is not that simple. Western governments are not exactly rolling in cash right now. It's the opposite, in fact. Look at Germany and France. Budgetary issues just took down governments in both these countries. Things aren't great in Britain either. Their chancellor recently issued a warning. She said that increasing the defense budget would mean cuts elsewhere, possibly leading to austerity measures. And the UK is one of the better NATO contributors. It has consistently met the 2% threshold. This year, it hit 2.3%. And even they are saying that it's tough to go beyond this. Only 5 NATO members currently spend 3% or more of their GDP on defense. Poland comes on top, Estonia, then the US, which comes in the 3rd place. Then there's Latvia and Greece. That's it. These are the countries that spend 3% or more on defense. Everyone else is behind. So they will feel the pinch if NATO decides to go for the 3% target. Now let's turn to the UK, where a political row has erupted. There are a lot of reasons for politicians to spar. The economy, immigration, the war in Ukraine, the list goes on and on. But British politicians aren't focusing on those things. They have decided to fight about what really matters. Sandwiches. That's right. Sandwiches. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, took a swipe at sandwiches recently. And Prime Minister Keir Starmer was not having it. Then some other politicians joined in, leading to one of the most ridiculous spats you're likely to see. Here's our report.
How do you like your sandwiches? Grilled or toasted? With some melted cheese in between? Or maybe fresh and healthy, made with brown bread perhaps? Or maybe you're one of the people who don't like sandwiches at all. If you're in that third category, it's best to stay clear of the UK, because a storm is raging over this very issue. A political firestorm, which centres around the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Badenoch gave an interview recently. It came out yesterday, and it gave British tabloids something new to talk about. Most of what she said was ignored. The focus was on her take on lunch and sandwiches. Badenoch said that lunch is for wimps, which is obviously harsh. But her worst was saved for sandwiches. She said, "I'm not a sandwich person. I don't think sandwiches are a real food. It's what you have for breakfast." This was apparently the wrong thing to say. Her opponents, the ruling Labour Party, were quick to seize the opportunity. A spokesperson for Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, "The Prime Minister is quite happy with a sandwich lunch." The spokesperson added, "I think he enjoys a tuna sandwich and occasionally a cheese toastie." Badenoch was not amused. She hit back on social media. She accused the Prime Minister of wasting time by talking about her jokes and ignoring real issues like an ongoing farmer protest. She seemed to be trying to hit 2 birds with 1 stone, highlighting the silence over farmer issues and clarifying that her sandwich dig was a joke. That second part, the clarification, may have been necessary, because it isn't just Starmer trying to capitalize on the sandwich spat. It's also her other opponents, like Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform UK party. Farage put out a video to mock Badenoch. Take a look.
The leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says that lunch is for wimps. Well, I tell you what, I think that lunch is pretty cool. But on the busy days, I stay in the office and have a sandwich. She even thinks sandwiches are wrong. Now, I leave it up to you, centre-right voters, to decide what kind of leadership you want. Lunch is for wimps or me? Cheers, everybody.
Farage is using the lunch and sandwich drama to canvass for votes. That's how much it has blown up. Sandwiches are overshadowing all the bigger issues right now. The British economy? Sandwiches contribute $10 billion to it annually. Immigration and cultural issues? British people have been eating sandwiches since 1762, since the Earl of Sandwich first had them made. They are apparently a part of British heritage. This is what has become of British political discourse these days. Everything's being viewed with sandwich-tinted glasses.
Srinivas Reddy, the state government in court, the public prosecutor went on to say that he is not a VIP, he is also an accused, that he was mainly responsible for what transpired. But that seems to have not cut any ice, because the High Court went on to say that even if that may be true, he has right to life. And in this case, the cops have not gone on to make a case for non-bailable sections like Section 105 to be actually invoked against him.
Yeah, good evening. Poonam.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. In this case, actually, what is the information that we have is that the police have. It's been stated that the police have been given a representation that Allu Arjun would be coming to the theatre to visit for a benefit show. Allu Arjun along with some other actors. But here the case is that though the representation or the information was given to the police, anywhere, any information or representation, if it is given to the police, then there has to be a consent from the police department before they starting the show. Without the consent from the police department, let us consider the fact, okay, let us assume that the letter has been given. But there also has to be a consent from the police department in writing, stating that so-and-so person can visit and that such and such bandobast will be provided. Here is a case where they say that the representation has been given. And just because the representation is given, that does not mean that they have got the right to just come and come into the theatre. Being a celebrity here, it is, you understand that number of fans are, it's going to create a nuisance. And without proper bandobast and without proper arrangements, going there will definitely be detrimental in the interests of the state as well as the theatre administration and all. Here, what has happened is that life has been lost, and it is a clear-cut law and order situation. Though the representation has been given, the consent from the police department has not come for them.
So are you saying that consent was not given in the sense that there was no response at all from the police, or that the police denied that consent, that you cannot hold this event?
If you have given a representation, it doesn't mean that you get an automatic consent.
Sure.
Only if you have the consent from the...
Sure. So I'm trying to ask Mr. Reddy is that did the police deny? Sure. But what I'm trying to ask is that did the police deny them permission and yet they went ahead with it, or did the police simply not respond to their request and then the theatre assumed it was okay and went ahead with it? Is that what you're saying?
Let's discuss big tech and Donald Trump. They've had a love-hate relationship. Nearly 4 years ago, after Trump lost the election, he was banned from all major social media platforms. So he went ahead and launched his own. It's called Truth Social. Now he has won the latest election, and those same platforms are rolling out the red carpet for him. Their CEOs are now eager to win his favor. They're even cutting million-dollar checks to do so. Our next report explores how big tech is trying to get back in Trump's good graces.
The Capitol riots were an unprecedented event in America's political history. US lawmakers blamed Donald Trump for the chaos. At the time, they argued it was Trump who lit the fire, which led to the attack on the US Congress. The internet platforms agreed. More than 10 of them deplatformed Donald Trump while he was still a sitting president. This effectively silenced Trump on the internet, and he had no recourse to fight back. Nearly 4 years later, the tables have turned. Trump has made a comeback on the internet's largest platforms. He's also won the election and is preparing to return to the White House. This shift has forced big tech to recalibrate. Consider Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, which is Facebook's parent company. Zuckerberg used to be a supporter of liberal politics. More significantly, he had a difficult relationship with Donald Trump. So much so, Trump has termed Facebook the enemy of the people. Zuckerberg has now pivoted to the hard right. Now he calls Trump a badass. After his victory, Zuckerberg paid a visit to Mar-a-Lago and had dinner with the president-elect. Now Zuckerberg has made a donation. Meta has given $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. This is a pool of money that's usually used to finance different events and ceremonies around the inauguration, like a parade or the inaugural ball. For big businesses, such donations are a good way to build a relationship with the new president. Which is why Zuckerberg isn't the only one cutting a check. Jeff Bezos is also making a donation. His company, Amazon, has committed $1 million as well. Reports say Bezos plans to sit down with Trump next week. More tech CEOs have sought an appointment with Trump. This includes Google CEO Sundar Pichai and Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. Benioff also owns Time magazine, which has named Trump as Person of the Year. He congratulated Trump yesterday in a post on X. So why is big tech eager to meet Trump? The reason is simple. They want to get into Trump's good books and manage, if not avoid, any disruption which a Trump presidency might bring. During his campaign, Trump repeatedly criticized big tech. He accused them of favoring the Democratic Party.
January 6th rally was a protest against a crooked election carried out by unhinged Democrats, big tech, and working with the fake news media, all working together to defeat Republicans and your favorite president, me.
The last presidential election wasn't compromised, but Trump still holds a grudge. He has an axe to grind with big tech for muzzling him. With Trump returning to the Oval Office next month, the tech giants are keen to avoid any further backlash.
Picture this. Dozens of nations come together. They hold a competition, a parade of scantily clad young women who are rated and ranked. The male gaze laps it up. There is abuse behind the scenes. There is buffet-style toxicity on stage, but apparently it is all worth it because finally one woman gets to win the honor of a tiara. Do you have the ick yet? Wouldn't a contest like this be all kinds of problematic? It should have no place in our world, right? Well, too bad that it does, because if you haven't guessed it yet, this is exactly what beauty pageants are: retrograde and demeaning. Yet they have been conducted for years in dozens of forms at international and regional levels with titles that belong in the cringy adjective hall of fame, like Miss Petite Global or Miss Glam World. This happens across dozens of countries, but one nation among them has come to its senses, the Netherlands. They have held the Miss Netherlands beauty pageant for 35 years now, but after its long misogynistic run, the contest is being scrapped. The Netherlands wants to transform the pageant into a platform for mental health, where women can share their life stories and talk about their struggles. The Netherlands has called the beauty pageant, and I'm quoting, "no longer of this time," and rightly so. But few others think so. A decade ago, a town in Argentina banned beauty competitions, calling them sexist. Other places like Nepal and Israel have temporarily shunned such pageants, but for their personal political gains. So why is the pickup so slow? Why aren't more nations raging against these abusive contests? Because they're big money. The beauty pageant industry is worth $5 billion. Most of these contests are sponsored. That's another $300 billion. Companies, even countries, benefit from these pageants. So why would they have a problem with it? But no amount of glitter or gold can distract us from the darker issues lurking beneath the surface. Listen to the conditions to participate in most of these contests. The contestants have a weight limit. They have to be a certain height. They must be unmarried and childless, and I'm not making these up. In 2018, Miss Ukraine was disqualified after officials found out that she was a divorced mother. And last year, Miss France was publicly abused for her short hair. Are these the qualifications of beauty? Or rules for a puritanical culture? Now, pageants obviously say that they are more than this, that they give women major scholarships. But reports say that that is not true. These scholarships usually offer a fraction of the money that pageants promise. So now the organizers say that they give women confidence. And that too has been debunked. According to a study, 26% beauty pageant winners have eating disorders. Nearly half of them want to be thinner, and these are women who've already won beauty pageants. They're apparently the fairest of them all, but even they find faults in their own appearance. Nothing seems to be good enough, and it never will be, because this game is rigged. When you pit a woman against another who is made to walk around like an unnamed entity known only by the name of a country or state, she is vying to be the shiniest object in the room, nothing more than that. Is this what we want for women? What about the young girls watching this dystopia, learning from it? That's years of damage right there. We have said this before and we'll say it again. Beauty pageants have no place in our world. The Netherlands finally accepts it. About time that other countries catch up. Can you charge a 10-year-old with a crime? Can you send them to prison? Most countries say no, but Australia's state of Queensland disagrees. They've passed a new law. Children as young as 10 will have the same penalties as adults if convicted. Obviously, this is for crimes like murder or serious assault. And their logic is simple. If you commit an adult crime, you will serve adult time. But is it really this simple? Will it act as a deterrent for youth? Or will youth crime rates go up because of this? Our next report explores.
In Queensland, a few new laws have sparked a controversial debate. The Australian state has designated 13 offences as adult crimes. This includes serious assaults, break-ins, and dangerous operation of vehicles. If a child is convicted of them, they get the same punishment as adults, even if the child is as young as 10 years old. For murder, the punishment is even more grave. A child convicted of murder will be given a life sentence with a 20-year minimum non-parole period. The new laws are courtesy of the Liberal National Party. They won the Queensland elections in October. These reforms were a cornerstone of their electoral campaign. The LNP argues that victim rights must take precedence over criminal rights. Hence the adult crime, adult time laws. The government argues harsher sentences will act as a deterrent, that it will prevent youth from committing crimes. Leading up to the vote, the LNP said Queensland was facing a wave of youth crimes, hence the need for a stricter approach. But contrary to the political rhetoric, statistics tell a different story. Youth crime in Queensland has halved over 14 years. 2022 marked the lowest youth crime rate in the state's recorded history. Since then, the rate has been steady. There has been no sudden rise in crime rates. Rights groups have criticized these laws, and the United Nations too has slammed them, arguing that they disregard conventions on the human rights of children. The new laws will also put pressure on the state's justice system. Queensland's detention centres are already at capacity. Many children are spending extended periods in police cells. Queensland already has the highest number of children in detention of any Australian state or territory. The government's plan to extend detention facilities is yet to materialise. But will these new laws act as a deterrent? Studies show that harsher punishments do not deter youth crime. In many cases, they only exacerbate the situation. When young people are sent to prison, they are exposed to environments that can further harden them. This increases the likelihood of recidivism. Experts say the key to reducing youth crime is rehabilitation and not retribution. Early intervention programs, education and support networks can help divert at-risk youth, offering them the chance to turn their lives around. Across the world, there are alternative approaches to youth crime. In countries like Norway, young offenders are treated with a focus on rehabilitation. The aim is to reintegrate them into society as responsible citizens. In the United States and parts of Europe, similar programs have seen lower recidivism rates. In India too, the focus is on restorative justice. So as Queensland moves forward with its tough-on-crime approach, the question remains, is it truly in the best interest of the state's children, or will the consequences of these laws reverberate through generations to come?
He is an Indian teenager, a Chennai-born prodigy, and now a chess legend. I'm obviously talking about Gukesh Dommaraju. He has stunned the world and rewritten history. At the age of 18, Gukesh has become the youngest world chess champion. He is the second world champion from India after Vishwanathan Anand, and the 18th world champion overall. He achieved this laurel at the FIDE World Chess Championship in Singapore. Gukesh defeated the defending champion, China's Ding Liren, who held the previous record at the age of 22. It was a dramatic match. Tensions were high. This was a 14-game match. Before the last game, the match was tied. It looked as though the final game was heading for a draw, but it came to an unexpected close. After nearly 5 hours of play, Ding cracked. He blundered. He made a simple but terrible mistake, and Gukesh exploited the error. He forced an end and clinched the title. Ding walked away, despondently shaking his head, and Gukesh, who was normally stoic, clasped his hands at the board, overwhelmed by the victory. He burst into tears. It has come full circle for Gukesh. He has wanted to be world champion since 2013 when he was just 7 and watched the World Chess Championship match in Chennai. It was played between Magnus Carlsen and Vishwanathan Anand, who was then the world champion. Gukesh sat in the audience at the edge of his seat and watched Carlsen win the title. But nearly a decade later, that same Gukesh has returned the glory to India and marked the peak of his own career, which has already witnessed a long string of achievements. Gukesh became a grandmaster at the age of 12. He has won the candidates. He has dominated the Olympiads by winning individual goals in the last 2. And now, he's the ultimate victory for this prodigy, who has earned the $2.5 million prize fund and received a flood of congratulations, including from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who called Gukesh, and I'm quoting, an inspiration for millions of young minds. But not everyone is impressed. Carlsen, for one, has criticized Gukesh's performance, saying that it is hard to understate how bad this was from Gukesh. But Gukesh does not mind the criticism. In fact, he says, and I'm quoting, it kinds of fires me up. Now that is D. Gukesh for you. He is obviously an extraordinary talent, but he is practically immovable as well. Because he doesn't just have the skills, he has the composure, he has the mental stamina, the mental fortitude to handle pressure. We know that Gukesh has a mental conditioning coach who calls the Grandmaster deeply self-aware. And we witnessed this quality in Singapore, not just during the game, but before it as well, when both players were asked to select a playing chair. They had 7 different options. Ding chose a simple office chair, while the ever-humble Gukesh chose this out-of-character dominant gaming chair. It shows you his mindset. All the grandmasters are already winners in their own accord. But what differentiates Gukesh is his mental strength. It has helped him stand at the apex of a robust chess world. He wants to have, and I'm quoting, a very long career to the top. At the top, rather. And by the looks of it, he will.
Srinivas Reddy, the state government in court the public prosecutor went on to say that he is not a VIP, he's also an accused, that he was mainly responsible for what transpired. But that seems to have not cut any ice, because the High Court went on to say that even if that may be true, he has right to life. And in this case, the cops have not gone on to make a case for non-bailable sections like Section 105 to be actually invoked against him.
Yeah, good evening. Poonam.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. In this case, actually, what is the information that we have is that the police have. It's been stated that the police have been given a representation that Allu Arjun would be coming to the theatre to visit for a benefit show. Allu Arjun along with some other actors. But here the case is that though the representation or the information was given to the police, anywhere, any information or representation, if it is given to the police, then there has to be a consent from the police department before they starting the show. Without the consent from the police department, let us consider the fact, okay, let us assume that the letter has been given. But there also has to be a consent from the police department in writing, stating that so-and-so person can visit and that such and such bandobast will be provided. Here is a case where they say that the representation has been given, and just because the representation is given, that does not mean that they have got the right to just come and come into the theatre. Being a celebrity here, it is, you understand that number of fans are, it's going to create a nuisance. And without proper bandobast and without proper arrangements, going there will definitely be detrimental in the interests of the state as well as the theatre administration and all. Here, what has happened is that life has been lost, and it is a clear-cut law and order situation. Though the representation has been given, the consent from the police department has not come for them.
So are you saying that consent was not given in the sense that there was no response at all from the police, or that the police denied that consent, that you cannot hold this event?
If you have given a representation, it doesn't mean that you get an automatic consent.
Sure.
Only if you have the consent from the...
Sure. So I'm trying to ask Mr. Reddy is that did the police deny? Sure. But what I'm trying to ask is that did the police deny them permission and yet they went ahead with it, or did the police simply not respond to their request and then the theatre assumed it was okay and went ahead with it? Is that what you're saying?
Here is a case where they say that the letter has been given to the ACP. But if it is being given to the ACP, it will be there in the GD, and if something of that sort, if it is a fault of the police department, definitely an inquiry will be held towards that effect, and sufficient action in that angle will be taken. But this letter has been brought forward a day after the incident.
But it's dated a day before.
They are saying that the letter has been given 48 hours or 24 hours before.
Yes,
but here,
48 hours ago. The letter is dated 2nd of December. The stampede took place on the 4th.
Yes, but this letter was not immediately even placed. It was placed a day after the event took place, before the media.
Sure, the media doesn't have to know the letter.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Ukrainian President Zelensky visits the front lines in Zaporizhia as the war rages on. In Croatia, an ancient Roman amphitheater lights up as a Christmas ice rink. And an 11-month-old bear cub becomes a breakout star at the Shanghai Zoo. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2003, US troops captured Saddam Hussein. The former Iraqi president was found hiding in a small bunker near his hometown. This ended an 8-month-long manhunt. Saddam Hussein was put on trial and convicted of crimes against humanity. He was finally executed in the year 2006. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
welcome to this late night edition here with me, Swastika Das, and we are getting you live updates from the ground as actor Allu Arjun is set to walk out of the Chachalgura prison. It has been a frenetic day for him. Remember, with respect to the Pushpa 2 stampede case, in fact, the Telangana High Court granted him interim relief this minutes after a magistrate local court here in Hyderabad pronounced that 14-day judicial custody for actor Allu Arjun, and minutes after that we did see a lot of pandemonium and chaos break out here on the ground. Politics too hitting its peak with BRS and BJP